You're listening to Love is the Answer, a podcast that explores the power of love in real life, with your hosts, Lynn and Laurel Elstrom. Hello and welcome to Love is the Answer. My name is Laurel Elstrom. This week we'll be talking about flexibility on the spiritual path with our guest, Amy Torres.
And I'm Lynn, and Love is the Answer is our podcast, and it's sponsored in part by Take Heart Publications, who is the publisher of A Course of Love and Choose Only Love. And you can visit A Course of Love website at acourseoflove.org, and you can download the first 24 chapters for free. That's acourseoflove.org.
All right, so we are so excited to bring in our guest, a beloved Course in Miracles teacher, Amy Torres. Amy's well known in Course in Miracles circles. Lynn and I are both big fans. She promotes an experiential approach to A Course in Miracles, and we are so excited to find out more about that and the work that you do. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you, Laurel and Lynn.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amy. It's an honor to have you. And so we're going to begin today with asking you the first question that we ask all of our guests. And it's kind of a big one. So what does love mean to you?
I found out at some point, and it may have been before I was introduced to A Course in Miracles, that real love is unconditional and not an emotion. That love has no expectations, no obligations, no judgments. And when I heard that, and I don't remember where, it hit me as true. Love is guilt-free. Love is freely given. And so love is this very generous, naturally overflowing urge to be kind, to listen well, to give freely with no expectation of anything in return. And I would say that it's a resonance, just a heart-to-heart feeling with other humans, a recognition of the light that we all have within us. Even if it's just a little spark, we all have it. That's what love is. Love is freedom. It's freedom from a certain type of expected responsibility that humans have. And so it just sounds awful to the ego that love comes without responsibility in a certain way. That it doesn't mean that I have to stay with you forever. For instance, if we're in a marriage, it doesn't mean that. It just means that we see the best in each other and give each other the benefit of the doubt, remain open. And of course, once you are on a spiritual path, defer to spiritual guidance all the time.
Okay.
Which involves trust.
It sounds like to you, love is being in relationship with other people and with life itself. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that's a very succinct summary. With other people, for sure, in relationships, and it could be, a significant other, a family member, or also, a passerby, a stranger in an elevator, the checkout person in the supermarket, and also in relationship with nature, with objects, with creatures, animals.
What I was hearing also is what Laurel said, the relationship. It's an intimacy in a relationship with everything. Maybe too, what was coming up to me is being able to commune and interrelate without, I think you mentioned this already, any kind of projections of interpretations. So basically you're seeing whatever is in front of you with sort of a clean slate and openness. And that's part of the freedom too that I heard you mention, like it's a freedom to be who we are, and honoring ourselves, we're able to honor others to be that way as well. I think it's a beautiful relationship of no judgment. It's unconditional, as you mentioned. Yeah, something happens. There's an alchemy that is felt too. I feel like in a deep holy relationship, there's some kind of alchemy that goes on, where it's more than just a person. You know, you're feeling, experiencing the energy. But that's kind of what came up with me.
Yeah, I like the words that you used, and you definitely added to what I said in a beautiful way. Yeah, so I think the way I described love was the ideal of love. And then, you know, how do we actually express that love as humans, as individuals?
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be flawed to some extent.
Yeah.
Simply because to err is human. The
To
human,
forgive divine.
yeah, exactly. You know, so
Mhm.
if we can err without punishing ourselves, but just
Mhm.
instead allowing, as the Course says, the Holy Spirit to offer correction,
Mhm.
you know, then we use our relationships to open more and more and more to find that sweet spot where something very pure on the clean slate actually comes through, and we have that holy instant of, wow, that was very clean. You know,
Mhm.
that exchange, whatever that was, you know, was ever expanding.
That kind of open-heartedness is one of the things that drew us to talking with you today, because you do seem to teach A Course in Miracles from a heart-centered place, and you're more open than a lot of Course in Miracles teachers. So I wanted to ask you about that, because I've seen that you've interviewed Mooji and Rupert Spira, and that even Yogananda is in your past. I'm wondering how you have benefited from being open to other teachers and teachings, but still incorporating A Course in Miracles and still staying true to that, and how you would advise other Course in Miracles students to kind of navigate that scene.
You know, the Course says something like, what we have thought were our greatest weaknesses are actually our strengths, and what we've seen as our biggest retreats have actually been our advances. I felt like I understood the Course. I really got it. It answered all sorts of questions that I didn't even know I had. I kept getting these clicks of recognition, and that was not really a mental or an intellectual process. So I sort of criticized myself for not being the best Course teacher, in the sense that I didn't really memorize the prose, and I, you know, didn't know it inside out, where I could say, oh, chapter 15 relates to lesson number 3, you know.
Yeah.
Somehow I trusted, and this is a big word and idea for me these days, trust. And, you know, in the teacher's manual, there's the development of trust section. I trusted that what the Course was offering me was true. And so I tended to see things in the Course like the heart of God. The heart of God is mentioned in the Course quite a few times. And we're told many times that we can't understand what the Course is giving us, and that the one who is reading the Course is not the person. And all of that, I just kind of trusted. And I also trusted things I was called to do. Like I needed to be in psychotherapy as a client. And I really got a lot out of that. And then I also was drawn into yoga. I think I was not quite 25 years old, and there was no yoga in New York at that time, and nobody told me about it, but I was just drawn into this studio off the street, and I was pretty defended in a way where my muscles were tense and I would keep it together. So I was somebody who did not cry in public. I wasn't a girly girl in that way. In fact, I envied my friends who would be crying. They'd tell me, no, you don't want to be like this. But I wanted to be, you know, flowing more. And so one day in yoga class, you know, yoga really softens the inner body as well as, you know, the surface muscles. And one day in yoga, I just started crying and crying. It was embarrassing, but it felt good. I got up and I just tiptoed over to the teacher and I told him what was happening. He said to me, "You're raining tears of compassion on the world."
Oh, wow.
So he totally reframed crying for me in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And in that yoga class, they had a little bookstore, and there was a tiny little blue pamphlet with gold lettering on the cover called something like How You Can Talk with God. And the word with really appealed to me.
Mm.
And that turned out to be written by Paramahansa Yogananda.
Oh. So what I'm hearing is that you approached A Course in Miracles not from a scholarly perspective, but that working with A Course in Miracles helped you be in relationship with the voice within you that was resonating with what you were learning. And that voice was giving you direction and you were following it.
Yes, and I was following it. Even when I had doubts. Yeah, I really like how you put that, Laurel. And you know, later I found out that Helen Schuckman didn't literally hear a voice, you know, and I was told that it was sort of like she was taking dictation, almost like a ticker tape going across the screen. But I've also heard that it was more just like a thinking or something. So, you know, I don't know exactly how it was for Helen, but for me, it was much more of body responses.
Mm.
And many people get tingles and chills, for instance, you know, when they hear something that's really true for them.
Mm-hmm.
But often we dismiss that, you know, as unimportant. We don't really take that as seriously. We don't give it the attention it deserves. Like, wow, that actually was a message from my inner teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what I've learned over the years is that the more I pay attention to those messages, the more I experience my body as kind of like a lightning rod for energy. I was in advertising when I was in my 20s and 30s, and I remember interviewing a great creative guy, Ed McCabe, and he told me that he was only satisfied with the work if it made him feel alive. If it gave him goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's Manual 26, but it talks about in the Course in Miracles how, I think that's in the one that says, can you reach God directly? But I can't remember, about how there are communication channels that the world does not even know about. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's definitely in one of the manual sections. And then I thought about that dream that was, I think it's in Journey Without Distance from, what is it, Judy Scott-Whitson's former husband, who wrote Journey Without Distance, the dream that Helen Schuckman had, where she went out into the boat and somebody appeared with her and showed this like radio receiver to her in the boat in the dream. And she said, well, what's this? This guy that appeared to Helen Schuckman in the dream said, it's a radio receiver. These are communication channels. And she goes, oh, wow. Can I bring that back with me? And he said, no. He said, the world is not ready for it yet. I really like the way you were relating all that, Amy. It spoke to me. I felt like actually having an experience and feeling feelings. That's another thing that I felt was missing for me in A Course in Miracles, even though, like you said, you know, it talks about heart, you know, the heart of God and heaven, you know, the hush of heaven holds my heart today. I just feel like that's been dismissed within the Course in Miracles community.
What I take from the Course is to follow our inner teacher.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the workbook, it says that. And so if we do that, then everybody is going to have something else that they're involved with, whether it's their family or a passion that they have for, it could be golfing. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's part of your life. And to integrate, if you're a Course student, what the Course is pointing towards with the circumstances of your life. What everybody does with the Course, you know, Ken Wapnick used to say, you know, only 5 people might understand A Course.
I think you're one of them.
Yeah, me too. I think Helen said that. She said that to Ken. Yeah,
Right.
It's only for about 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my question, Amy, that I have for you now is, often we attempt to live up to all these spiritual ideals, yet these ideals, often they fall short with our lived experiences. We can, again, as we've been talking, you can grow intellectually in these truths, but it's not embodied in the fabric of our daily life. And that's it's very segued into just what we've been discussing. And so a painful split can occur into like who we are now and what we're striving to be. There's a split. And so I wanted to see if you could share a little bit with us about how to integrate our spirituality, the pure openness of being, into our human beingness, integrating the spiritual, the absolute with the relative in our daily life. You could say a little bit about that. I know it's a huge question.
Yeah, but it all has to do with becoming more aware.
Okay.
More self-aware in a good way, looking with the Holy Spirit at our underlying motivations, yearnings, and being willing to really see what the ego is, what we as a collective mind made when we decided to actually believe in the dream, to take a look at that. And also I have a sense that, the human life is what I think Eckhart Tolle calls on the horizontal plane.
Good point. Yeah.
And the spiritual life is the vertical plane. The metaphor that the Course uses is that we're climbing a ladder back to heaven. The idea is that we're not really trying to integrate spiritual ideals into our humanness. We are trying to connect upwards, so to speak, into our spiritual nature. And as we do that, it naturally radiates through the person.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So just that nuance changes everything, because it's like we're plugging in to the biggest power source in the world, God. Yeah. For instance, if I'm having an argument with my husband and in the middle of it, well, I feel he's being totally unreasonable, right in the middle of it, if he says to me, let's just love each other, I'll see how infuriating that is to me. It's like, first, let me make my point, acknowledge what I'm saying, and then we can love each other.
Let me be right first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What I'm hearing in some of this is, well, a couple things to do our own inner work, as the Course in Miracle talks about, we're not teaching about what love is. We're actually here to remove the blocks to love's awareness.
The awareness of love's presence.
Yeah, to the awareness of love's presence. So as we clear those blocks, the image that I have of it is like a rainbow. Okay, so like pure beingness, the one self, capital S, is the absolute clear light. But as the vessel, and I've heard Eckhart Tolle talk about this too, as we cultivate these qualities of pure beingness, and they could be, for me, it's like, generosity or compassion or patience, open-mindedness. All these are actually a lot of them are in the Course in Miracles and the characteristics of teachers of God. But as we cultivate these qualities, it's like we're forging a vessel and we're polishing that vessel to where the light can shine through.
So, Amy, you've been teaching A Course in Miracles for quite a while now, which is great. So my question actually has two legs to it. The first one is, do you feel like you've mastered The Course in Miracles? And then the second part of my question is, would you explain more about what you call your experiential approach to A Course in Miracles and how someone could study A Course in Miracles from that experiential point of view?
Let me do the second question first, because It just occurred to me that, for instance, when I'm reading the text in A Course in Miracles, a sentence or a paragraph will strike me, and I will pause right then and there and either read it aloud or accept what Jesus is saying. He might ask a question, and I will say, yes, I am willing in this very moment, here and now, to join with you and the Holy Spirit. I will use the text as a workbook. So I'm not hurrying through the text to get to the workbook so I can get to the manual for teachers. And I can feel in my body when I read something that strikes me, it, either my breath like opens up or my muscles might settle down. If the shoulders are tense and high, they might, lower and just kind of relax, and I'll notice that. And it can be very subtle, that something in me might even like a little inner gasp, but it's a good gasp, like, of that light bulb moment. I get it. This explains everything.
Are you recommending then that people do this individually and they use the text as a springboard to inquiry? Is that kind of what you're advocating?
Yes, I love that. Yes, use the text as a springboard to inquiry in a physical way.
Say more about that.
Yeah, so notice if something in you lights up when you're reading something in the text. Notice if your mind goes still for a moment and discern, am I blanking out because it's too much, or have I just entered the holy instant? And, let me not just disregard that like it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say experiential, are you talking about a body experience?
Yeah, I think that experience is only really known in the body. That's an interesting question, Laurel. I mean, is
It's an
there
interesting answer too.
is there mind experience? I mean, there is, in the sense that everything is only happening in the mind. And what seems so real to us, the flesh and blood of the body and the pain, and the agony the body can go through, is really not happening. And the Course literally says, at no single instant does the body exist at all. And so still though, where we seem to experience is through the five senses and through the body. And at some point, you may actually not differentiate between the seeming edges of your body and the rest of the world. So it seems like the experience is happening in a physicalized way, but we would trace it back technically, in the metaphysics, to everything is just happening in the mind and being projected outward. But for now, on the practical level of the world, as a human, yes, pay attention to your body, because paradoxically, the more you're willing to get intimate with your body, the less you will identify with your body.
Well, that causes that's really interesting to me, because I have thought of the body as an energy system anyway. And it raises the question, since, I totally agree, everything's happening on the inside, then maybe what we experience as the energy system of the body is closer to our genuine response than the intellect. And that's why it's such a responsive energy system that we can learn to rely on as we're navigating whatever is creating this experience in this moment.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever heard of heart math, and also my Sufi teachers who taught heart rhythm meditation forever, they both say something like the magnetism of the heart, the energy field of the heart is like 100 times greater than the energy field magnetism of the brain.
Yeah.
So, that's something they've actually been able to measure. And that supports what you were just saying, Laurel.
Yeah, I was thinking that before you said Heart Math Institute, it was the same thing that came up for me, because they say that the heart is like an organ of its own intelligence. Yeah. And actually the heart and the brain are connected. Yeah. And that's something big that A Course of Love talks about, is the heart and the mind joined in wholeheartedness. So there's not that split between what you're thinking and how you're feeling. It's wholehearted, meaning that the mind and the heart are joined. So what I'm feeling is not going to be in discrepancy to what I actually do. It's like I'm not feeling one thing and then I'm doing something else, because that's not authentic.
Lynn, that would require a really strong integrity. And so many people do not authentically do what they feel. In other words, if you're witnessing something that's disturbing to you, you may hold your tongue because you're afraid of consequences of speaking up. So that's a tremendous lesson for human beings to learn. And when I went to yoga, there was a little sign in the hallway that said, "Say what you mean and mean what you say."
There you go. Yeah.
And that was mesmerizing. That is developing integrity, which could be a life lesson for so many of us.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually, and then we have to move on to the question of the week, which is actually all of this is connected. One of the 10 characteristics of a teacher of God, it talks about that in honesty. And it says that really honesty is consistency, and that there's nothing that you're feeling that contradicts what you say and do. And therefore, if you're in that flow where the mind and the heart are joined, you're not in conflict with yourself. And if you're not internally in conflict, then you don't generate conflict outwardly, because the two are connected, as within, so without.
Circumstantially, you may walk into a conflictual circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
and probably your energy will be calming to that
Yes.
circumstance. But if we look at the story of Jesus, his story ends up with him being crucified. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like his unconflicted energy and his consistency made that situational, peaceful, and nice, and everybody said, oh, let's just go home.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just love each other.
Yeah. So Laurel, Amy, just please join us. We'll all three join in together with this. You have something for us, Laurel?
I do, and it's just really timely. Considering the political unrest in the world today, I'm not sure what role I should play. I want to stand up for equality, but I want to live a life of love, not opposition.
Mm-hmm.
How is love the answer to oppression and inequities in society? How do I respond to these problems from a place of genuine love?
In the message of the crucifixion in the Course, Jesus says that the message was the resurrection, and that message was teach only love, for that is what you are. Teach only love, for that is what you are. And it doesn't mean walk around talking about love. It means embodying the love that you already are. And how do you do that? You do that by undoing. It's a whole undoing process of looking at the ego and stripping away everything that you are not. Sometimes Course students will feel like, well, I don't need to take any action in the world because the Course is telling me I am not a body. And I would say the more that you're willing to go inside and feel what you feel, what the ego feels is shame, guilt, self-hatred, terrible, terrible feelings. And we need to be able to feel those feelings and see that as you bring them to the light, that
Mm-hmm.
you move through them and come out the other side. And in my own personal psychotherapy work, I had experiences of going into a feeling like humiliation, and to my astonishment, coming out the other side into a sense of innocence and dignity.
Mm-hmm.
Going into a feeling of terror and allowing the body to shake uncontrollably, which will do anything to fight against, really clench up and anything to maintain control, and then only to move through that shaking into a sense of incredible quiet and peace, because the nervous system shook itself out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll tell you, one time that happened for me was when I decided to just cut my hair off and let it come in white. I sat in the hairdresser's chair, and to my dismay, I just started shaking from head to toe, and my teeth were chattering because my identity was being stripped away.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
how do we translate that into inequality, social inequality, economic inequality, racial inequality? By doing the inner work and understanding that if somebody else is hurt, I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I am not separate from you.
Yeah.
And then allow something in you is going to have an urge to do something. It might be to write a letter. It might be to donate money. It might be to be more of an activist and show up, to make a phone call, to write an email, to ask, how can I participate in whatever? And that's just a symbolic expression of love, especially if you don't make the other guy the enemy.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing with George Floyd, it made me sick. And the thing is not to hate the cops.
Mm-hmm.
What must be going on in them for them to behave that way is so appalling and unthinkable. Everybody needs our love, not condoning an action, love.
Mm-hmm.
The USA was built on the history. I would just invite everybody to watch the documentary 13th and find out more about the history behind everything, but ultimately that's the story. We have to allow our feelings, not try to hold back and say, oh, I don't really hate myself that much, or I don't really hate somebody else that much.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a Course in Miracles student, oh, yes, you do. You think that you separated from God, you hate yourself for it because now you're in big trouble, and you project that out and you hate God because you're sure that God is going to punish you.
Which leads me to, when I was considering this question, the recognition that the world that I see is my own reflection. And if I come at this issue from that, I can see who is it in me who oppresses other parts of myself? Who is it in me that I have been oppressing? Who is it in me that is angry and feels helpless? And I don't know that those questions need to be answered specifically, but the willingness to look and see, and the willingness to recognize that there's nothing outside of me that is not my own reflection, and to find a way to love and incorporate that is the inner work, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of course, there's that you might be prompted to work on the outside at the same time, as you were referring to. I might just feel a resonance with going downtown and demonstrating, or I might feel something else, and that comes about naturally. But the real work is within.
Yeah. Looking within with the Holy Spirit at what the ego made and starting to realize, oh, that's not really me though. But that's what I've been paying attention to and acting out. You know, Mooji has a really good video right now. If you just go to YouTube and search for Mooji George Floyd, he talks about this too.
Yeah. And I think there's a level of accepting our own story as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to go back to your original question, I think that love might be summed up as acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, acceptance of what is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just briefly, it's pretty much what you guys have already shared. I was going to say, for me, like the first and foremost thing would be to get in touch with how I'm feeling in the moment before I were to go out and, you know, go to a protest or a march or whatever it is. But the most important thing would be to really trust the guidance, like, you know, really connect with the inner guidance, Holy Spirit, you know, the divine, the inner voice, to really check in with that guidance. Because I feel like when I'm in that space and I'm really connected to the guidance, that's when I have the absolute clarity. And so, you know, the prayer that comes up, you know, in the Course in Miracles is like, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? And what would you have me say, and to whom?
Mm-hmm.
So if you really trust that inner voice, and I think Laurel mentioned this too, you might be guided to go do something. You might be guided to go to a march or a protest, and there's nothing wrong with that because you're following your heart. You're following the guidance.
The way to discern is if you can feel that you're coming from a clean, neutral place, a loving place. And you'll know, because if you can feel that you're coming from a fearful place, an angry place, an upset place, there's nothing wrong with that, but make sure that that's not dominating the guidance of the Holy Spirit.
When you're in that place of neutrality and you know that there's no projection on any of it, but you're in that space of guidance and you're having that clarity of what to do, where to go, what to say, and to whom. Yeah, it just all flows. And there's nothing wrong with going to a protest if that's what you feel guided to do. Going to a march or whatever. It's not about, you know, laying down and being a doormat.
Sitting around and being a slug, like there's going to be in the world.
I think both of you mentioned earlier too about the presence, bringing that energy with us wherever we go. So we cultivate do the inner work, as Laura was saying, and we're able to cultivate that genuine presence. That's an energy field. So if I go to a march today or something, I'm bringing that energy with me. You know, that's a healing energy that I'm giving to everyone, because giving and receiving are one. Well, you know, I think we're kind of running up on our time. I'm sure this could go on for quite a while. That's pretty much it. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And be sure to listen next time. Our guest is going to be Elliot Robertson, and our topic is going to be coming home to who you are.
And we'd love to feature your question as our question of the week next time. So please submit your questions by emailing us at loveisalwaystheanswer@gmail.com. loveisalwaystheanswer@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Amy, for being our guest. And for everyone who's joining us on Love is the Answer, we really do love you and see you as ourselves, and we will see you all next time.